expecting more from us. So how can we link our processes, our systems with the customer want, so that as we deliver, we're meeting what the customer is looking for? Now, people want to serve customers, want to make the customers happy, but you realize that the process that you have are not helping you to deliver this. So just linking the two and seeing what I need to do from my end.
Okay. Thanks, Jackson. Okay, so Elizabeth, you had the expectation around networking, so just remember that for next time. Okay, good stuff. So I'm going to jump right into this conversation. And initially, when I first thought about this, when we started to talk about it, I wanted to do it from the point of view of customers, right? And then as I explored it a little more, I realized that in any organization, whether you're employed or you're the employer, there's a myriad of, should I say, stakeholders or people who are interested in your business and in the activities of your business. So I extended it a little bit. I know the flyer talked about customers, but I'm just going to extend this a little bit and say, how about we talk about just different stakeholders? So your stakeholders, depending on where you are, could be your manager or your boss. It could be your employees if you're the one who's hiring, or people who are directly reporting into you. It could be your board of directors. Pretty much anyone can be a stakeholder in a business, right? So it could be board of directors, it could be your CEO, it could be anybody within your CFO. All there are so many parties that are involved in business. And so I've extended this conversation to beyond just customers and saying, okay, fine. They are customers in this way. They have a requirement from you. And so how do you link what you're doing in your job or in your business to what your customer or your stakeholder wants? And so that's the basis on which we're going to have this conversation this morning. I have about 50 slides. We have about 50 minutes. So brace yourselves. No, I wouldn't do that to you, I promise. It's it's almost noon. It's hot in Nairobi. And so I'm just going to jump right into this conversation now. So again, as Elizabeth has mentioned, I'm a consultant at Top Tier. I also do other things, right? But the work that I do at Top Tier is I work with Lucy, who's also on this call as well. And recently, maybe in November last year, actually, Ken came on board as partner. So there's a lot of collaboration happening on this call as well. So part of my role at Top Tier is with reducing, and so what I like to do at Top Tier is to appear for webinars and all sorts of things, but other people actually run the show. So Top Tier is a business that supports organizations to simplify what they do. And we started to do this work because we realized that a lot of people grapple with everyday things. And there's so much complexity in our lives that if we took a little bit of that out, we could focus on the things that are really important, right? How many of us wouldn't like to be on the beach like Elizabeth and Eric seem to be? But that notwithstanding, Top Tier supports businesses to make what they do as simple and as clear as possible so that they can get better outcomes for their customers. Okay, so in terms of understanding, I'm just going to jump right into this conversation around understanding customer/stakeholder needs. And I think the most critical thing to do in whenever you have a group of stakeholders is to identify who your key stakeholders are. So the first step over there on the top left is just identify who are my stakeholders. If I'm working a job, is my stakeholder my boss? Is it my manager? Is it my CEO? Who are my stakeholders? Who are my primary stakeholders? Is it my colleagues, who are the people that I'm working with, the people in other teams? And then after I understand who my stakeholders are, and then to understand what do they need from me? So that's the idea around capturing their voice. So the voice of the stakeholder, which is typically called the voice of the customer, is really around understanding well, there's all these people who are interested in the work that I do. There are all these people who are interested in the work that my organization does. How do I know what they want? And capturing their voices, understanding, is listening to their words, specifically, very specific, listening to the words that they speak. So when you have a customer, and I do this in my day-to-day job, is to understand when somebody says, I need this from you, what are they asking specifically? Because many times we can misinterpret what people need and end up delivering short of what they expected. So capturing the voice of the customer or the voice of the stakeholder is really around listening to what they are saying. So some things people just infer in our culture, especially, you have to be very careful. We have to be very careful because people tend to insinuate or suggest things. They make it sound very casual, but it's the most important thing to them, right? So the skill here for everyone who has to serve any kind of customer is to listen, right? Is to listen to what are they saying, what are they asking for right now. They use the word perhaps. Is there perhaps I must have that? And so capturing the voice of the customer is just listening to customer words. So one of the things that I like to do today is whenever I'm talking to anybody, whether it's on the phone or in a meeting, whatever it is that we are doing, I have a little notebook where I'm writing the words that they are speaking. And I could have my own interpretation of it, right? But I do that later. When I'm in the face-to-face, when I'm in the meeting, when I'm on the call, I'm actually writing the words that they're speaking because the words that they're speaking are the most important things to them. Somebody will say something casually like, if you guys could do this for me, I'd be very happy. But then they make it sound so, well, it sounds like a mere suggestion, but often the words that people speak, their voice is probably the most important things to them. So capturing the voice of the customer or the voice of the stakeholder are very important because then that's what allows you, then you take that and that's what you translate into things that you can actually measure. So if somebody says, I'd like, if this project could be finished by the end of February, I'd be very happy. Then it's about saying, okay, fine. They've suggested the end of February. Are they serious? Is that a hard stop for them? Is it a hard deadline for them? And when you're capturing the voice of the customer, that's what you're trying to establish. You're trying to establish, is this business critical? Is it, what is it, right? And just and as you do this, of course, you're even asking, you could ask deeper questions. I often go back and say, if I've captured something and I feel like I didn't hear it right, I often go back and ask again. I can make a follow-up call and say, oh, you said this. What did you mean by that? So, because that allows me to translate to exactly what the customer is looking for. So I'll give you an example. So I met this client just before Christmas, I think the weekend before Christmas. And they said, they told me this coming year, which was 2023, we must crack our processes. I said, okay, fine. What do you mean? Why is that so critical? He said, this thing is a do or die for us. If we don't have the right processes in place, my business, we must have the right processes in place. He didn't say if there was no negotiating around it. And they're very aggressively chasing a certain certification for which they need documentation. And so as I work with this client, this year, I'm under so much pressure because I completely understand that the end of February deadline is critical for them, right? They made it sound casual. They made it like, oh, okay, fine. You know what? Yeah, it's important, but they're not letting those deadlines slide. And so being always aware of what the customer wants allows you to translate the things that they say to you into things that you can actually measure. So it is the 22nd of February, we have about 8 days to deliver for this client. And so now my mind's working around, okay, we've done so much. We have so much left to do. How do we crack that for the sake of the client? So it's really around being able to take what the customer is telling you and translate it into something that's really measurable, something that's measurable for you and something that's measurable for them. And then the fourth step is then agreeing, okay, fine. Your deadline is end of February, 28th of February. Based on the information we currently have from you, I'm looking at 3rd of March scenario, is that acceptable to you? Then the customer will come back and say, okay, give or take 3 days is okay with me. And then you use that. So you will basically agree, this is what I'm going to deliver for you. A lot of times, I find that client dissatisfaction comes from the fact that we don't, we miss some of the things in here. We miss some of the things that customers are saying to us. We miss some of the suggestions, we miss some of the nuances, and we interpret them on our own. So we translate into our own deliverables, and based on that, we will deliver things that something that's a little off from what they require. So bottom line is, in understanding your stakeholder needs, you must identify who your key stakeholders are. One of the things that one of my managers does very well, because I work in another situation where I have a manager, right? And so my manager is very good at reminders. And now one of the things that I've realized is that every day on Friday, she will tell me, I need this from you, I need this from you. So this week, I'm going to be a little bit ahead of her, right? And make sure that what she's going to ask me for on Friday, I will give her tomorrow, because it's her expectation. I've come to understand from the things that she says and from the things that she does, that her expectation is for updates on Friday. So my shift in understanding what she needs, in terms of understanding what she needs in order to be able to do her job, I need to make a shift around when I give her the information that I give to her. So understanding stakeholder needs is about identifying who are your key stakeholders. If you're in a business, if you're running a business in Kenya, what are some of the stakeholders? They don't have to be internal, right? So they could be anybody. They could be external. So they could be external bodies. They could be internal. They could be. I know. I've talked a lot about customers that you serve. So they could be customers that you serve. But just let's think a little bit about this. What are some of the other people that could be your customers or key stakeholders for us, where we work, or in the businesses that we run today? You feel free to type in the chat. Waiting, watching the chat.
Right, Rosslyn, I have a question. So one of the things about customers is often that, like, as you've just alluded to, someone tells you, I want things cracked. So often customers do not really know what exactly they need.
Yeah.
How do you work on that?
Okay, fair enough. I can answer that question in a moment. So I see Antoinette has said there's a critical, GOK is a critical one. Yes. Ignore the government at your own peril. Any others?
Rosslyn, if you're, for example, in a field which is a professional field, for example, you're in HR, you're in supply chain, you're in legal, like some of us, then you have professional bodies that sort of either license you or give you the license to operate. So those would be critical stakeholders.
Okay, cool. That's critical. That's very important. Thanks, Antoinette. I think that's just anybody, any regulator or any licensing body in your industry, very critical, very important. And then Belinda has added on their suppliers as well, especially when you have suppliers that have an impact on your ability to supply to your own customers. So think about if you're hiring consultants, if you're in the service industry, if you're hiring consultants, or if you're in any other business, any person, any third party that you're relying on to be able to deliver to your customer is a very critical supplier. So very, very important. And then they are also around quality. They make suggestions around what you can do with ensuring that you have the right suppliers. So yeah, thanks a lot, Belinda. Any other? One more at least? I know we've talked about GOK, we've talked about regulatory bodies or licensing bodies, suppliers. We talked about the customers that you actually serve. We talked about your boss. Okay, so that's a good number. Let's keep moving. And then we can talk about, before we move on, we can answer the question that Elizabeth has. It's so customers sometimes don't know what they want, right? Is that true? Maybe we can answer that question together. Is it true that customers don't know what they want? Mary, you're very quiet. You want to tell us?
Hi, thanks. I've been following keenly on what you're talking about, and it is true. Not that customers don't really know what they want. It's at times, it's somebody would desire to have something, but let us look at even the finances. Like they desire to have something, but they're not in a position to even, have enough resources. But again, you find we are in this space whereby there's literally you walk into a shop, and at that point again you get so confused. So it's on both ends. Thank you.
Okay, so that's two very interesting things you introduced there, right? That there's limited wants, right, and unlimited wants but limited resources, right? Antoinette, you want to say something about that? Go for it.
Yes, I wanted to contribute because I worked for a long time in the consumer space. Just to say that consumers or customers always know what they want. So I know that I want to get from here to Mombasa today. I know that I want my hair done. I know that I want, I need a pair of shoes to go. I'm going for a run on Friday or something like that. But how they get it and what it actually looks like when they get is what they don't have specifics about. They understand very clearly the need they have and what they want, but they don't know what it will look like or how it will be delivered. And I think that is a space where businesses come to satisfy. Not that we don't know as customers what we want. So that's my perspective. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Antoinette. Is there any other contribution to that?
On the chat, Jackson has just mentioned what is the difference between what customer wants and what customer needs. And I think Antoinette has actually talked a little bit about that. But yes, that's Jackson's comment.
Yeah. So I think, I tend to agree, right? Sometimes we know exactly what we want, but it might be difficult to articulate it. I mean, think about relationships, right? Just generally, sometimes it's you're in a relationship and you're feeling like, okay, am I really getting what I want out of this relationship? And the thing is, it might not be. It's almost like you recognize what you want when you see it. However, sometimes it's not so easy to articulate exactly what it is you want. And so if we're in any kind of business in which we purport to serve customers, then the goal is to listen. And I think that's what I said around listening to the voice of the customer, because then from what they're saying, you've got to be able to deduce, right, what they are looking for. So one of the things I said, like I even go back sometimes and say, is this what you said you wanted? So that somebody is compelled to tell you a little bit more. I'll give you an example. I met with somebody who a few months ago told me, I want us to document our processes. I said, okay, that sounds good. And then we met them, we went and actually met them at their business premises. And then as we talked more, I realized that what they really wanted was a way to actually measure the performance of their people. So while they thought that by documenting their processes, and they were hoping that by documenting their processes, then they would be able to capture, then I can say, okay, this is what you're supposed to do, and this is what you're doing, a little lower. How about you come up to this level? The truth of the matter is what they really needed was a way to measure performance. And they thought that this was the route to getting to how they measure performance. So yeah, we did document their processes, but then the critical thing was then to be able to answer for them the question of how do I measure how my people are actually performing? So in listening, in listening, then you start to find the answers into what people are actually looking for. So yeah, I'm going to move us along, and hopefully this thing about Antoinette has talked about it, but I'm going to just take it a little further with my next slide around what is the difference between customer wants and customer needs. I'm going to introduce something that I learned a number of years ago, actually when I worked at Maersk. That was so cool. I found so very interesting. It's called the Kano model. or Kano, depending on where you come from. And it's really around, it's really a graph talking about customer satisfaction and measuring the degree to which you meet customer needs, right? So at the bottom right there, you have things that are expected. So for expectation here is really around, it's a minimum. If you're offering a service, if you're offering any kind of thing, so if you buy airtime, let's use the airtime as an example, you buy airtime for 500 bob or for 100 bob, your expectation is that you'll get airtime worth that amount. That's at the very minimum. It's just where you start, right? And so for any organization or any business, as a starting point, just focus on meeting what the customers expect, right? So this is a product that you're offering that's out there on the market. At the very minimum, it must do the things that it is expected to, it is supposed to do, right? So I've talked about the airtime. If you buy a banana on the, hopefully, if you buy a banana on the street, right? So those ladies who sell bananas, and they are nice and yellow on the outside. So your expectation is that you're buying a ripe banana, right? At the very minimum, it's that it's ripe. So for that woman who's selling that banana in the middle of the day, she's put out there, at the very minimum, she must sell you a banana that's ripe. If you buy that banana and you find it a little crunchy on the inside, a little bit unripe, that's disappointing, right? So the degree to which your needs or to which your needs are being satisfied at that point may drop, because at the very minimum you should have been given a ripe banana. And it's the same with service. If we purport to offer consultancy services, then at the very minimum we must be an expert in the area that we are saying we are offering services in. So if you go to a lawyer to register a company, your expectation is that they know the processes of registering a company in Kenya, right? At the very minimum, right? So expectation, what is expected in terms of understanding what customers need or want is the very minimum. Then you move it a little bit into things that people want. So wants are the extra requirements above what is expected. So I want, I'm buying a bundle, I'm buying an airtime bundle, and I want it because over and above the number of hours it gives me, the number of minutes it gives me to speak, it has a data component, right, that allows me to watch YouTube or WhatsApp for up to the end of the day, right? So I'm buying it for the extras. And so the extras is just the wanted is the extra above the minimum, the extra above the expected. And often from the business side, a business has to make an adjustment to their basic offering. So you're expected as a consultant to offer, let's say you have an hourly rate and you have consulted for an hour in a certain area. And then somebody says, but I want a little bit of follow-up. So the follow-up could be in the form of coaching. And so you're saying, okay, fine, the extra that I'm giving you, because now you want the extra, is then charged at this amount above what I would ordinarily charge you. So that's the thing around shifting customer needs. So there's an expectation, a minimum that you must meet. Then there's the extras that I want, which is the over a little bit over and above, or a lot over and above the basic. And then there's this other element around delight, right? And these are the things that wow customers, right? These are the things that you're offering them that make them talk about you in a good light. Every time they talk about you, like, that business understands exactly what I need, right? So you are delivering on what is expected. You have given them what they've wanted, and then you've gone beyond that, right? And what you're basically doing then as a business or as an individual who's working in a job is that you're giving the wow. So think about if every morning you have somebody who's asking themselves, how do I make Eric's life better today? You know, he's my customer, and we offer him this service. how can we make sure that his life is better today? And some of the things that businesses will do then are going a little over and doing the things that make you feel fuzzy and warm on the inside, right? And make you think that there's no way I'm going to shift from this particular supplier. And that's really how you start to build, how businesses start to build loyalty, because now they are at the place where they have understood that while I can offer what the customer expects, while I can offer what the customer wants, if I went a little over, I could probably offer them a little more than they even wanted in a way that makes them completely stick with us. So I'm wondering, do you see any examples of this in our business environment? Let's just talk a little bit around that. Around who in your opinion is completely wowing customers? Any businesses that you can think of? No? Hey, I see. Antoinette, yeah, go for it.
So I had an interesting experience a couple of years ago. I don't normally go to dentists, but I went to a dentist.
Okay.
I'll withhold their name for now. So I went in, I booked an appointment. I went for the appointment, I finished. And when I finished, I came home. I had quite some extensive work done in my mouth that day on my dentals that day. Yeah. So the next morning, I was fine. Then 2 days later, I was surprised to receive a text message from the dentist who had actually worked on my teeth to say, hey, good morning, just sending you a message to find out how you're doing. I hope you're not in any pain, which I was like, the least thing I expected from a dentist, but very surprised. And that sort of made me think, oh, these guys are not so bad. And then after a month, they said, okay, we hope you're still doing well. 6 months later, they sent me another message that said, hey, perhaps it's time for you to, schedule a checkup. Would you like to call us? And, so I found that like over and above what my expectation had been. I had got my dental work done. It had been done satisfactorily, but they went over and above and they wowed me. So now I recommend them to anyone.
Shamelessly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Can we guess who that is?
Oh, this might be a long meeting. If you start guessing.
You can guess in the chat.
I have a similar experience.
Okay, go for it.
Oh.
Yeah, go for it. I'm not sure if it's the same people, but I have a similar experience, so I can relate to what you're saying, and that really touches our customer, touched me as a person.
Yeah. Good stuff. And the truth is that thank you, Antoinette, thank you, Eric. The truth is that sometimes we get stuck at the it's expected, right? So we just do. I mean, this customer, they wanted us to clean their teeth. We've cleaned their teeth, right? So it probably cost them absolutely nothing to send you a text. I mean, aside from the cost, I mean, it's such a minimal cost to send you a text to check how you're doing, right? But then look at the effect that it has on you, right? So many times we kind of we stop at the point where we are like, okay, we've done our job. Imagine if you came every morning to work and asked your boss, I've done this. What would you like me to do for you today? Wouldn't you become the employee of the year every month, right?
I think they think you're bored and you have nothing else to do.
Oh, you think? Okay, so you have to be careful with that. Fair enough. But if you are doing what you're supposed to do, then I think it would have an opposite effect, right? That they'd be like, this person is really interested, keen on helping. But fair enough, that's a fair point. So the thing is then figuring out what it is that wow customers, what is it that wows just customers, but stakeholders in general, right? So we're just let's just develop that conversation. I'm very cognizant of the time, so we have about 15 minutes left. So we're just gonna move this on. We're not under any kind of rush. It's also important that this is useful for us, but I'm gonna move this on. Think about the wow experiences that you can create for the people that you're serving. So I'm going to talk a little bit about processing because, well, I need to talk about process because we are a process organization, but no. Process is essentially how work gets done. So you take a number of inputs, it could be materials, it could be systems, it could be documents that you're referring to. You add that to very deliberate steps and handovers in those steps. So handovers is here that work is moving from maybe person Y to person X, or work is moving from department A to department B. And ultimately you get a desired outcome, or you meet the requirements of your stakeholders. Because ultimately this is the end game is to be able to meet requirements, right? The end game is to, at a minimum, give your stakeholders what they expect, what they want, and then of course at the highest level to wow them, to create delight factors. But bottom line is that there's a desired outcome, right? When the outcome is not what you expect, there's other things that are done to correct that. So that's where you have dissatisfied customers and you have to take steps to correct that. But we're saying in the happy flow, you take inputs, you add very deliberate steps to them, and then you get a certain outcome. The truth of the matter is that we cannot ignore the people element in process, right? So everything, a lot of the things that we do are done by people, right? So even if it's an automated system, there's somebody in the back end making sure that the back end is working the way it's supposed to. It can be programmed to work in a certain way. There's always somebody that's checking it. So what any organization does, what any good organization does that creates experiences that customers enjoy is combine all of these elements well. So you can have very good processes and have the wrong people working in them, the outcomes will not be desired. You could have extremely good people, but given very difficult conditions or situations in which they work, and the outcomes will not be good. So there's absolutely no way to separate process. So defining the process and how work gets done, and then putting the right people in those roles, and that's a people conversation that's completely different from what we're talking about today. That's another thing altogether. But combining your process and your people will ultimately land you at your desired outcome. So it's very critical that organizations understand this. What I do internally and who I have that work done by is critical to getting the outcomes that I want. Okay, so how then do we take everything that we do internally within the organization and link that to a stakeholder? So the first step is in understanding and I think we did this in the first slide, is just understanding who are my stakeholders. So I've given a number of examples there. You could have regulators, you could have your primary customers, the people who are buying the service or the product that you're selling. You could have employees, you could have your employer, you could have the board. It really just depends on the owners of the organization. Stakeholders, identify who your key stakeholders are, right? And then in identifying who they are, and this, by the way, you can apply this stuff at home as well, right? It can really help you focus on the things that you must do as an individual and the things that you can outsource to other people, right? But bottom line is, you're trying to create more time for the things that you love and enjoy. And so how do you increase productivity, your own personal productivity, even at home? So this can work at home and it can work in the office as well, or in the business that you're running as well. So who are your stakeholders? What do they need from you? So think about regulators. They expect you to comply with certain requirements for your industry. And I think somebody had talked about this at the beginning. So compliance demands that to be able to comply, there are certain things you have to do internally for that to happen. So some of the things you have to do is you have to keep proper records. So if you're hiring people, who are you hiring? When did they join? You need all of that information to be able to file statutory returns on their behalf. When was your business registered? When does your filing for annual returns fall due? When do you audit? So all the processes around keeping of records of filing of returns and audits are all to help you to comply, right? And so what happens, of course, the happy flow is that all of those things happen in the way that they're supposed to. Well, there are also situations where that doesn't always happen. I'll pick another example. So let's pick owners of the board of directors. Their requirement is that this business is profitable for them and it gives them a return on their investment. And that it's also sustainable as well. I mean, sustainability is another whole topic on its own, so we're not going to jump into that, but maybe those are some of their requirements. And so what internal process do you have to ensure that you're meeting the stakeholder requirements? You have reporting processes, right? So reporting around the financials, reporting around other things as well. It could be reporting around what your efforts on sustainability. So it's just it can be a whole broad thing. So what is it? What am I saying with this? The thing I'm saying with this is that in identifying your stakeholders, then you start to identify and your stakeholders and what is important for them or what they need or require from you. Then you start to identify or start to see the processes, the internal processes that are impacting those stakeholders and the needs that they have, which also, from a lean perspective, allows you to start spending time on things that are critical, right, and important to stakeholders, and deselecting or spending less time on the things that are not critical. So there are some things which we do on a day-to-day basis that, well, they're not so business critical, but they need to get done, right? So understanding, for example, let me pick an example that is not so, well, okay. Even something as simple as cleaning the office, right? It doesn't seem like a big deal until the office is not cleaned, right? It may look very low-key and very unimportant until it's not done. So it's just figuring out who is the primary, or who am I serving, or who is my stakeholder, what do they need, and what internal thing do we do that helps to meet that need that they have. If you do this really well, then you're able to identify the few things or the most critical things that you must do in your business, right? And then, of course, there are the others which you can outsource. It's not about saying that you stop doing them. It's about understanding who is the most important person to do the thing that we are asked, that we require to do for this stakeholder. And I'm just going to move this along and say, okay, fine. So how can we start to use this practically? And the goal is to be able to increase your personal and team productivity. So personal here is bottom line. I want more time with my day, right? I was talking to Elizabeth earlier and she's telling me she's got a myriad of things to do today. And bottom line is we all seem to need more time. And so how do we make sure that we have the time to do the things that we enjoy and the things that we love, right? I enjoy working, I must admit, right? But I don't want to work all the time, right? So how do I make sure? How do I spend time? How do I figure out the things I need to spend the most time on, or to spend my time on? So this is a little simple process. It's a 5-step. It's 5-step because there are 5 headings up there. And really just understanding, think about the things that you do on a day-to-day basis, right? Think about the things that you spend time on, right? Every day. So I wake up, I come, I get ready, I come to work. Right now I'm on this webinar. Think about the things that you spend your time on. Write down those things. That's your internal, those are your internal processes or your internal activities. Who needs this thing that I am spending time on? It could be me. I just need for my own personal development to be attending this webinar. And what need is being met? So be very clear around, I like what Jackson said earlier, is like, I'm here to network. So it's very clear around his need is for networking and to be able to meet with a group of people that have similar interests, or maybe just a completely different group of people. So just what need is this particular activity that I'm spending time on meeting, right? And then am I getting the results that I desire? So are the results, so I'm spending time on this activity, is it giving me the results that I expect, or the results that I desire, right? And then if not, and even if it is, what can I change to make those outcomes or those results better? Right, so it's really around thinking, okay, I've joined the webinar today. It's meeting my personal need. The need that's being met is the need for interaction, the need for learning. Are the results, did this webinar meet my needs? Well, that's a question you will answer. And then what can I change so that I can do better? I mean, there's a myriad of things you could be doing right now. There's so many things you could be doing right now. There's probably another webinar running right now that you could be attending, right? So bottom line is, if it's meeting the need of networking, if it's meeting the need of expanding my network, expanding the people that I know, the people that are in my industry that have similar interests with, if it's meeting that need, perhaps you're in the right place and there's nothing you need to change. But if it's not, then you need to make adjustments. It's just really thinking around and being honest with yourself, is that Is there anything I can change? If the answer is no, then you know what, keep attending. And so if you extend that to business, that's you at a personal level. If you extend that to business, think about your monthly reporting. So monthly reporting is done in your business every month, hopefully. You may or may not be involved in it, but who needs it? Your CEO needs it. Maybe your CFO needs it, depending on whether you have your organization is structured that way. And then what need are they meeting? So why do they need it? They need it because they need to understand how the organization is performing so they can make better decisions, right? So if, for example, that reporting is done late or that reporting is erratic, what's the impact, right? We make decisions maybe with half information, with not all the information, and we essentially, if we have all the information that we need at the time that we need it, we make better decisions, right? And so, and that's on a personal and on a business level as well. And then think about, so in the CEO, in the monthly reporting example, what can we change to do better? So right now we have erratic reporting timelines. What can we change? We can define, number one, let's be clear around when the reports are needed. And then number two, help the person who's preparing the reports to understand why the deadline is important. Because many times I find that adults, I say this often, adults respond to why. And so if people understand the why, then they are more motivated to do things. So that's pretty much it. So in a summary, I think the most critical thing is to understand who am I, what am I doing in my business, in my job, where it is I work, at home. Who are the people that I'm serving? Who are my key stakeholders? What do they need from me? When do they? So what here is also when do they need it? That sort of thing. So once you're able to define what your key stakeholders want, then you're able to understand what is expected as a minimum. Maybe there are things that they want that you're not able to deliver right now. That's okay. But just knowing in the back of your mind that it's a want, that's a little extra above what they expect is important. And then if you can get to a place where you can wow or delight them, then you're heading in the right direction. So now you know what you know who your key stakeholders are, you know what their needs and their expectations are. And then you've understood that if you line up what you do internally with what, if to be able to meet the needs of your key stakeholders, you have to align what you're doing with what it is that they need. Then it really helps you to focus on the things that you must spend your time on. And so think about your job, think about the business that you run, think about your consultancy, think about the things that you're doing and figure out, should I be spending time on this? How much time should I be spending on this? And then on the basis of that, then closely tie the things that you spend time and money on to the things that are really, really critical, whether critical to your customers and to your key stakeholders. Because for business particularly, and in jobs especially, it's in meeting the needs of others that you get paid, right? So people, we are selfish human beings. Bottom line, it's what's in it for me, right? But we'll put my money where I'm getting value. So how do you create value? Focus on your stakeholders and their needs, and make sure that you're spending time on the things that they actually need and require from you. So if there are no questions or any comments, I'm happy to hear comments or feedback, any feedback from you. I'll hand it back to Elizabeth, then she can well, continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, Rosslyn. That was really, really useful. From the Kano model, it's always a joke like, wait, I'm coming from the Kano plane, so I should really be good at this, at this analysis of customer needs when we're having floods, etc. But that was really, really useful to have the lens of what we need to do to meet. Often when I work with customers, they want to give the wow factor before meeting the minimum requirements. So you get a lot of companies spending a lot of time on delight, and delight is not cheap. instead of meeting minimum customer F, which is, getting it on time, making sure it has good quality, and also just the cost is reasonable. So those are the three minimum basic requirements. But let's see, anyone who has questions, thoughts, reactions to those couple of slides Rosslyn has walked us through? All understood? Or any alternative or a differing angle to meeting customer needs? No? Any questions at all? Something that was clear wasn't?
I think when we're talking about different stakeholders, James said something about lenders. So just as a
yes.
thought, around that. Yeah. Okay.
All
So
right. Yes, there's a comment. Voice of customer. Oh, Belinda, do you want to explain that?
Oh, no, sorry, I was just probably wrapping it up. So for you to even understand or put together processes, you need to understand the customer's needs, as Rosslyn has said, which will be converted into the voice of the business. So how will they meet those needs? And then what do they need to do? The voice of the process to actually deliver on the product or service. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's well put. And just to end our session, it's just an introduction of what's coming up next month. I know a lot of us have had about ChatGPT. There's a lot of conversation about AI. So if you're really interested in how you can optimize your processes, but also use artificial intelligence, please join us next month, same time, same date, apparently, just in March, to learn more. And our speaker will be Paul Obiero, who some of you may know. He has really accomplished a lot with process improvement, from working with KQ to going to Kenya Highlands, and now he's working with manufacturers in Uganda. So thanks so much for your time. And if you have any questions or any concerns, and also how we can improve this learning session, thank you so much, Antoinette, for your feedback. I'm glad Rosslyn simplified it for you. So thanks again, everyone, and wishing you the best of today and week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rosslyn.
Bye.
Good presentation. Very useful.
Right, and there'll be a recording that we'll share within the next few days.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ken, for attending, and yes.
My pleasure. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Eric, Jackson, Mary, Port, James. May you have a good day. And Rosslyn, of course.
Thank you. Bye. And have a good day.
Bye, Jackson.
Thanks, Liz. It was
Bye.
nice to join in. Thank you.
Welcome, Mary. All right.